Duggars may have had their reality show, 2 Billion Kids and Counting, canceled due to one of the kids being a sexual predator, but that hasn't stopped them from making news, as with the recent revelation that Josh Duggar had a paid account on the Cheat on Your Spouse website, Ashley Madison. And they've also not let that cancellation get in the way of them continuing to put their family values message out there on social media. The Duggars' message is a particular brand of fundamentalist Christianity called quiverful. Normally, a quiver is something that you put arrows in, but in this case, it's a metaphor for something you put penises in, i.e. a woman. Just kidding. The arrows aren't penises, they're babies. But the other thing is still a woman. Because the idea is that a woman is basically only in existence to push out babies. And if she's not pregnant or in the act of giving birth, then she'd better have a damn good reason, like being dead or under the age of 16. 13. 12. Their latest social media post features Ben Seewald, who is worse than a Duggar child because he actually chose to marry into the family, as opposed to the children who don't really have much of a choice growing up that way. And to show how cool and with it extremist Christians can be today, Ben has brought along his one black friend. Ben sits down with his friend, Dante Barry, to just rap like two cool bros do about the hot issue of the day, racism. Because I'm sure you've been aware of the rash of murders of young black people at the hands of cops throughout the United States. And so what could Ben and Dante possibly offer to this conversation that hasn't already been said by the Black Lives Matters protests, for example? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here is what Ben says. There's no room for racism in Christianity. That all comes from the devil. That all comes from like this false religion out here, evolution, that stuff. Teaching that like some people are more evolved. So yeah, racism comes from evolution. I mean, in a way, he could be right. Humanity may have evolved to be racist because protecting your family members at the expense of outsiders may help you improve your evolutionary fitness. And just kidding. He's not talking about any of that. He's talking about social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is a general term for a number of different really gross philosophies, all of which say that one particular race or ethnicity or group of people is superior to the others, and so we should select for those groups artificially. That sort of thinking, of course, inspired groups like Nazi Germany, but it obviously has nothing to do with Darwin's original idea of natural selection and our current understanding of the theory of evolution, since there's nothing natural about artificially selecting the people that you want to die and then killing them. Scientific theories like evolution simply describe reality as best they can. They don't tell us how things should be. And that said, evolution certainly doesn't tell us that any one group of human is more evolved than any other group. Although I did recently come across an older article from 2007 from a group of researchers at University of Michigan who studied chimpanzee DNA, and they found that chimps are, and I quote, more evolved than humans. So I wonder how much of an insult that would even be if it were true. Ben also says that there is no racism in the Bible, which only furthers my hypothesis that no Christians have ever actually read the Bible. Because the fun thing about a book that long that's been cobbled together over thousands of years by dozens of different authors is that it can take pretty much any position on any topic. It's pro-slavery, it's anti-slavery, it's pro-woman, anti-woman, and yes, pro-racism and anti-racism. If you've read the Bible, it won't surprise you to know that in the Old Testament, God is super racist because he was pretty much the worst in general. But he's constantly telling the Israelites to ethnically cleanse everybody who isn't an Israelite. And he even gets super pissy and murdery if he finds that they're marrying people who aren't Israelites. So a lot of Christians, though, will hand wave away the awful things that God said and did in the Old Testament because they say that when Jesus comes along in the New Testament, he changes all of that. At the same time, they understand that Jesus is God and God is Jesus. So really, they're just saying it's okay because God changed his mind. So basically, God is your super racist granddad who stopped openly making racist jokes when your cousin had that baby with that Hispanic guy. But it turns out Jesus was pretty racist too, like in Matthew 15:22, where he tells a woman that he's not going to cast demons out of her daughter because they're Canaanites. Well, in fact, he doesn't even tell her that at first. He won't even speak to her because they're Canaanites. And it's not until his disciples yell at him and try to get him to talk to her that he does talk to her and says that healing her daughter would be like letting a dog have the good bread. And finally, the woman admits, yeah, I'm basically a dog. Please give me your crumbs. And finally, Jesus waves his hand and miraculously cures her daughter immediately. Because he's Jesus, and doing a miracle like that takes basically no effort at all. He was just hanging out with his 12 sexy man friends drinking wine and decided that, okay, finally it's worth his effort to do this and heal her daughter. What a jerk. So anyway, the whole point is that I'm really glad Ben Seewald has a black friend, but I hope he never asks him to do him a favor because we know what Jesus would do.